Hey guys, welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about a trend that isn't really a trend. Now, why do I say that? Because it's kind of been around forever, but in a lot of different iterations. Now, this puppy is super hot right now, and it kind of looks like something like this. I love this space. It's so intentional, and it really makes such an amazing statement. Now, if you're not quite sure what it is yet, imagine if you took Grand Millennial and popped her on a little Adderall. You'd get something that looks like this. This is another great little space that's called maximalism, baby. And we're about to talk about it today. Now, maximalism to an untrained eye can absolutely look like a hot mess, but it's not. It's very intentional. And when you start to really study it, you understand that there's really a lot of rhyme and reason to how you get these absolutely kind of interesting textured layered spaces. Now, if you've seen this video about transitional design style, you'll know that maximalism is kind of smack in the middle between traditional and contemporary. So it sits right there in a subcategory of the supercategory of transitional. Now, there's often a lot of contemporary elements that are included, but also a lot of traditional, and you're going to tend to lean towards one or the other. So here's the deal, guys. Maximalism is super legit tricky, and you can easily go overboard if you do not have a strategy. What kind of strategy am I talking about? Well, let me show you. One of the big things is rhythm and repetition. Now, you can see that easily done in this space. They have two sofas that are identical in color, very strong, and they also repeat the decor at the back wall. So there's definitely a balance and a repeating of elements that happens. Another super important element is having it being a multicolored story. But don't go wild, guys, because they definitely have a tonal control or an understory that is important for the space. So, for instance, the turquoise envelope that makes a huge statement in this space allows you to bounce colors off of it, and it kind of controls the color storyline. Or another way to do it would be to do a tonal story that's chromatic opposites, like this blue and bright orange together. That's a fabulous sort of maximalist statement, but feels a little bit different than the first picture. A third element that you're definitely going to play with is layered composition. Now, that means applying patterns, textures, colors, etc. to the same space, but you have to do it with a sense of what we just addressed, which is rhythm and pattern and being aware of the color story. Now, fourth element that you often see, and this is why you see it firmly in the transitional style category, is elements pulled in from different eras. You can see lots of contemporary things, but they're mixed in with very specific traditional elements, like these chairs and the sofa that are kind of done in a traditional style, but they're a neutral color, and they play against that incredible Chinese cabinet in the back. So those kinds of things are what happen when you're combining elements in an intentional way to get a maximalist story. Now, guys, as a style statement in general, maximalism is the full meal.
Finally, monsieur, a wafer thin mint. Oh, sir, it's only a tiny little thin one.
It is not a tasty snack. As you can see in this room, you really need to commit on this one. Now, because of this, it's really not for everyone. So, who really lives happily with this style? Well, maybe you're someone who's a little bit eclectic. This is an amazing expression of a very specific, very eclectic space. More, maybe you're a global traveler. Oh my gosh, and you're bringing things back, and there's a really kind of an unusual sort of multicultural statement that happens. That often is reflected in maximalism the best. Or are you a collector? Maybe you love books, maybe you love blue and white chinoiserie pottery, those kinds of things. Doesn't really matter, artwork, china. It's all good, but maximalism is where you can really display those collections in a way that is intentional and makes sense and works with the rest of the room. So, if you've discovered you're a maximalist, congratulations! It's a fabulous style. So, let's take a look at some elements that you can do to get it in your home. So, number one is you always want to start with your architecture because you want to make sure you're playing nice with whatever your structure is. If you're mid-century modern, you have to address that. If you're not, and you have some fabulous carved walls in your space, you want to address that as well when you're taking this into account. Okay, number 2, you want to plan your layout. Now, depending on kind of what end of the spectrum you're going to lean towards, maybe you're a little bit more traditional, you're going to have things that line up, repeat, and are more formal in their layout. Or if you're going to do a little bit more of a contemporary iteration to something, you can absolutely play with asymmetry, but you want to make sure that you keep your balance and your scale in check with all of those elements. Number 3 is that intentional color palette. I know, guys, it's really easy to look at these maximalist images that we're seeing on Pinterest and Instagram and go, it's just a riot of color. No, it is not. Let me show you how it's done the right way. This is a perfect room. I know we saw this before, but it's a great example. This has a very specific color story to it. It's blue and white. Now, it's repeated throughout multiple elements in the room, and that's how it makes it work. Or, let's flip on over. Here's another version of maximalist style that also does a lot of color repetition. That hot pink in those chairs and the color that's on that carpet, and then there's some elements that are on the table there. All of those repeat in that same color. So that's a very definitive color story that you want to make sure you include and keep it retained to so it doesn't turn into overwhelm and craziness. Now, number 4 is to build your layers. Ooh, and this one you have to start from your foundation and build up. So think about what are your layers and your textures on your flooring. How about your walls? You definitely want to include lots of pattern and or color on walls. That is a huge element you don't want to miss. Ceilings. Maybe kind of lighting stories like you see in this room. Or make sure if you've got window treatments, you are definitely addressing them. There's nothing that falls flat faster on maximalism than if you have bare windows. So womp it up, honey. Go to town on those. But make sure that it's still part of the same storyline. I love this room because I love the sort of green and green early Art Nouveau vibe to this. I believe it's actually in Europe. And they've layered on all of those statements that are from that era. So they definitely added a lot to it, but it's all from that era, so it all really works and makes sense together. Number 5 is more, but you want to have it tell your story. There's a very important distinction. You cannot just pile things up in a room and expect it to come off. I like more decor. Love this room though. This tells you everything. You've got layers and layers of textures and things happening, but there's definitely a chinoiserie bend to it. The color story is strong and repetitive, so it really sort of works. It's a rich space. So when you're adding more and more, there's a lot more that can happen and can speak to your storyline when you start to add it in with intentionality. So if this is making you smile and you want to lean hard into maximalism, you want to go to my design club. It's right down below, and we've got all kinds of resources and opportunities to help you get what you want for your space in the club. And you also might check out my website, which is lisahult.com, where there's all kinds of fun links and blogs and all kinds of other information. Don't miss my YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys soon.